All right, greetings from the dark continent. Conscious Caracal here, or Arends van Sail, here to shine a light on the goings on down south, here at the southern tip of Africa. And tonight, I'm going to be having a look at a philosopher that I think viewers of my channel will recognize, but many, the vast majority of people out there will not. As you can see, it is currently, I'm in the middle of a rolling blackout once again, so the lighting is going to be a bit strange again. It's not going to be perfect, a bit sinister even, but it's the best I can do. I've jippoed like a light here, made a little boermaker plan. So the show will go on, but just letting you know, that's why the lighting is a bit eerie. The hum of diesel generators fill the air. All right, I see people are already tuning in, already taking part in the live chat. Goeienaand, manne en vroue, wie ook al inskakel vanaand. And yeah, tonight we are going to be talking about specifically the idolaters of the act. Now, this is a concept thought up by, or first conceptualized by Afrikaner philosopher van Wyk Louw in his book Liberale Nasionalisme, 1958. And when I read this part of his book the first time, it filled me with two conflicting, paradoxical emotions. On the one side, kind of a relief, or a relief is probably the best word, and on the other hand, a frustration, because it just reminded you again by the more things change, the more they stay the same. And in particular here in this context, in regards to people. Now, van Wyk Louw was specifically writing in regards to the Afrikaner politics and culture at the time, but I think this topic here tonight stretches far broader than just that. Wow, we are getting quite a few people in the chat already. You don't have to forgive me for government total state failure. But yeah, I appreciate the sentiment. Goeienaand, yes, hello. Good evening, everyone. Yes, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'm just giving you guys some love here on the screen. Yiz says, idolater of the act is a great phrase, concept. I'm glad I learned that from you. I learned it from van Wyk Louw. That's a true saying. Evening all. All right. I think we're not going to waste any more time. Let's just get into tonight's topic. So let me just make sure I've got everything set up here. So already, 1 second. Let me just, my screen is a bit, there we go. That's better. All right. So already in the 1950s, the Afrikaner philosopher van Wyk Louw warned against the idolaters of the act. Now, you have to realize and keep in mind throughout this stream, every time I use the terminology idolaters of the act or the act is capitalized, because this is a deity that people, or an idol that people worship. So for effect, van Wyk Louw, when he first wrote about this phenomenon, he capitalized act. So whenever I'm reading or whenever I come across that term within, or use that phrase within the stream, just see it within that context. So here's van Wyk Louw's direct words, translated by me, so not perfect, to the best of my ability. And I quote, "We have already made a kind of idol out of the word act. And at the smallest opportunity for boastfulness, we speak of an action that strikes like thunder. But then what would be the acts that have such a meteorological effect, make such a big noise as thunder, grabbing a gun and shooting, yelling at meetings, throwing a punch? Those who believe this are truly lost." End quote. The sound of van Wyk Louw's wise words, which hit the mark, still echo today, because the idolaters of the act are still in our midst, just in other guises. Today, they shout with bulging veins on online videos and stir up discord in comment sections rather than in just meetings. Well, exclusively online. It's increasingly online, and rather not just even in meetings. That's already too much to ask, it seems. Just as desperately as their predecessors in Van Wyk Louw's time. Apologies there, just a little bit of an internet hiccup there on my side. Again, third world internet during a rolling blackout. I see here Sideliner Opinions is in the chat. Also, Vilma Erasmus, goeienaand julle. And then Sideliner Opinions. Before we continue, let's just read here. Sideliner Opinions says this is a very important topic. Politicians and instigators abuse the emotions of people by encouraging them to act violently to achieve their aims. Here's another comment. Is there an English translation of MP van Wyk Louw? Unfortunately not. He's very neglected in that regard. I could possibly do it, but I'm going to have to do it in my own time. So unfortunately not at the moment. He's not behind a paywall. He's behind a language wall, his works. So maybe one day. He has amazing stuff, but it's all in Afrikaans. See, everyone is reminding me that the stream is back on and clear. Thank you very much. Quinton Ferreira is in the chat. Guys. Well, Quinton, baie lekker om vir jou te sien. Thank you very much for tuning in. Old subscriber, not in age, rather in time being a subscriber. Quinton has been a guest on the channel as well. He also had a big a big blessing within his life, personal life recently. I don't know if I have the liberty or if I'm allowed to mention what. Quinton, you can mention in the chat if you feel so inclined, but just congratulations on that big development your side. I'm very, very glad for you. All right, let's continue with the idolaters of the act. So, according to my observations, there are three main types of idolaters of the act. First, the uncertain idolater of the act. These well-intentioned figures, the master championers of action, proclaim the need for immediate action, any action, as long as there is action. But they struggle to put their fingers on specifically the action they so desperately want to see. So we've seen these people online in the real world, increasingly online. You've heard these types of phrases or demands. Somebody do something, anything, or at least they're doing something. So, for example, when nobody is doing anything, these people demand somebody do something, anything. And then also when they see someone doing something, even if it's stupid, they will say, oh, at least they're doing something, and they're excusing it. So this is the first category. They're pretty benevolent. They don't know exactly what type of action they want to see, but they encourage action. But it's still dangerous because it pushes people towards action without thinking about exactly what they want to do. As the saying goes, it's better to do nothing than to do something stupid. And this is exactly the danger that lies within this first category. So the second category that I identified is the cowardly idolater of the act. Now, here it gets a bit more malicious, but more immoral, I should rather say. These pathetic figures are the acolytes of the act with a clear idea of what radical action they want to see, while extolling the virtue of fearlessness. They are like, we have to be brave people. We have to show no fear, be fearless. Those are their mantras. However, when asked to explain what actions they have in mind or to add action to their words themselves, their nervous excuses reveal their true colors. They know full well that inciting what they see in their mind's eye has serious consequences and are therefore too afraid to even take that risk, let alone carry out these actions themselves. All right, before we continue, Quinton, yes, he's responded. So Quinton says, good to see you, bro, and thanks for the kind words. I am both an old subscriber and an old man, and was just blessed with my first child, a healthy little girl, Lucia Zulmira Ferreira. Well, there you go. I didn't want to break the news myself. I wanted to make sure if you wanted to share. So there, big congratulations, my friend. I'm very glad that you have started this new chapter in your journey as a family man, as a father, with a beautiful young girl to enrich your life. I'm very, very glad for you, Quinton. All right, I see more people are getting into the chat. And Years says, Quentin Ferreira, bless you and your new one. All right. Now moving on to finally the malevolent idolater of the act, or malicious idolater of the act. This is the most dangerous idolater of the act, the one that causes the most suffering and harm. They name the extremist acts they would like to see by name. However, they mainly do their conniving work in dark alleys with the whispering voice of a drug dealer. These most faithful servants of the idol of the act have been responsible throughout history for many young men needlessly ending up in either prison cells or worse, coffins. These dangerous figures you must chase from your city walls. They are agents of chaos or of dark human forces. Now, these are, and I'm not going to go into detail in regards to examples of each of one of these. These are more archetypes of the type of person that we've all encountered in some form, particularly online. So just before I continue, just to refresh everyone again, the first one is the uncertain idolater of the act. So this is a more benevolent figure. This is someone that champions action, encourages action. Someone has to take action, but they are personally uncertain. They don't name the action that they want to see because they don't really know what type of action they want to see. The second one is the cowardly idolater of the act. They also don't know what actions they are encouraging. They say people need to take action, but they know what type of action, but they don't say it. So these are the people that know what they want to see other people do, whether that be violent or criminal acts or extreme acts, but they are too cowardly to even put do it themselves or to even name what they want to see. They just kind of want people to infer what they mean. And then finally, the malevolent idolater of the act. These people these figures just blatantly name what they want to see, the terroristic or violent or criminal actions that they want to see people do, but they also don't do them themselves or even show up to the events where those actions are being done. They just encourage them from the shadows, from the sideline. Sometimes they'll show up at the action, but they'll slink away as soon as real consequences start being dealt or when people start getting arrested or worse. So these are the three types of idolaters of the act that I've identified to add to MP van Wyk Louw's idea. Before we continue, let's see here. Sideliner Opinions says violence should be reserved for immediate self-defense. Using violence to actively achieve political aims makes you someone's terrorist. Actually, Robert Daigen wrote a fantastic article or a report on dissent and resistance to tyranny. You can find it on AfriForum's website, but you can also find it on my channel. I did an interview with him about the contents of his channel. It's under my videos tab. I think it's called, let me just make sure because I want to direct you to the correct place. I think it's called, my internet is a bit slow, so I'll check now, but I'll remind you in a second once it pops up here what the episode particularly is called, where I chat to Robert Daigen about his report on. Let's see here. Okay, the internet is cooperating. All right, just bear with me for 1 second. Here we go. It's called an introduction to civil disobedience. So if you search on YouTube, an introduction to civil disobedience, Robert Daigen, you'll find it, my conversation with him. And there's a link in the description of that chat also to the full document. Very fascinating stuff. I highly recommend it. Debbie Moray says, hearty congratulations, Quentin. Enjoy the beautiful blessing. Beautiful. Simon van der Graaf says, hello, Mr. Van Zyl. I didn't know there were Afrikaner philosophers. Always glad to find new things. How much of it would you say has translated to English? As I said earlier, unfortunately, very little. I think some of his poetry has been translated, but not as non-fiction. Not that I'm aware of. Maybe one day I'll take up the challenge. And Quentin says, the congratulations are streaming in for Quentin. Very, very nice. All right. And the freighter watches, yeah, goeienaand, good evening. Congratulations on your baby daughter, Quinton. Oh, wow. The chat tonight is incredibly wholesome. All right. So, how do you stand in opposition to these idolaters of the act? I think that's a question that obviously comes to mind now that I've spoken my words of caution. Brave deeds are undoubtedly much needed today, just like in Van Wyk Louw's time. Our actions must be well thought out, and their ripple effects must be properly debated and considered. And here's the example that I always use. Now I'm going to use not an Afrikaner philosopher, but an Afrikaner war hero and great Afrikaner hero from our history, General De La Rey. So in the run-up to the Anglo-Boer War of 1899 to 1902, General De La Rey set a good example. His warning against rash talk of war led to him being called a coward in a Volksraad meeting, so a convening of the folk or of Afrikaners or the community, to which he confidently replied that if the time came for war, he would still fight long after those who so eagerly wanted to make war fled from the battlefield. So just to repeat that, it's so powerful and so true. So he was called a coward in the meeting because he said we need to be cautious about these eager war talks and going to war. War is serious business. It has dire effects and it could destroy our people. We have to be very, very careful and make sure all the ripple effects are considered. And he confidently replied when he was called a coward, he said that if the time came for war, he would still fight long after those who so eagerly wanted to make war had long fled from the battlefield. His firm rebuttal turned out to be prophetic. The biggest war talkers were quick to disappear when real war broke out, and those who advised on the side of caution fought until the bitter end of the Anglo-Boer War. Our decisions about, Our decisions about actions should not be taken hastily, and if you advocate an action, you must be prepared to carry it out yourself. Actions that are sure to make a big impact include, among other things, greater involvement in community institutions such as local neighborhood watches, churches, or schools, or supporting organizations that implement community-based, state-resistant solutions, especially as volunteers. Communities must give an ear, a chance, and a hand to the people who have clear, well thought out plans. And we must remain constantly vigilant against the destructive whispers of the idolaters of the act. So, what I read tonight was just an English translation of an opinion piece that I wrote for Marula Media earlier this year. It was called Ons moet nie kniel saam met die verafgoders van die daad nie. And if you are Afrikaans, you can go read it on Marula Media. You can also go watch it, where I do a presentation on it on my Afrikaans channel called In Alle Erns. There's a link to that in the description. All right. I see Andre Brits is in the chat. He says, Carols, not Andre. Sideliner opinion says, when you dig trenches, do not attack anybody. You only draw a line in the sand and stand your ground. That is using the threat of defensive violence as a deterrent. Well, this is one of the other things when it's a bit diverging a bit from the central topic of tonight, but I think it's still relevant. When people ask, for example, Afrikaners or organizations that represent Afrikaners like AfriForum or the Solidarity Movement, Solidariteit, but you're up there when we get the comment of you're up against this powerful state, you're up against you're a micro minority, micro demographic minority in your country. You're up against all these odds. The government's just going to destroy everything you build. Why do you even try? Well, the thing is, and this is what I remind people, is that just because there are big predators out there doesn't mean you can't have an asymmetric defense strategy. So asymmetric force when it comes to defense. Look at I use the example of the porcupines in the Kruger National Park or in any national park in South Africa. So yes, the porcupine is much smaller than the lions walking around, and a lion would like a quick snack. But lions don't generally or commonly eat porcupines. They don't want to get a face full of quills. Porcupine has a very good defense mechanism that helps it overcome the asymmetric odds between it and the lion. And the same with Afrikaners and any organized minority group is that you have to make sure that you are inedible in that regard. You have to use the porcupine strategy. You have to make sure that you have a proper deterrent. An organized minority always beats a silent majority, as I always say. And the same goes for the badger. I mean, the badger is the African badger specifically is a very small animal. But go look up on YouTube lions fighting a badger, and you'll see a lion tries to eat the badger, but the badger has such a thick skin and is so brave and fearless and ferocious that it can defend itself and stand up against even lions. So that's the type of strategy you have to follow as a minority, as a small group. You have to follow and develop an asymmetric defense strategy, as the porcupine has, as the badger has. Let's see here what's going on in the chat. Yes, Roof Culver says ons sal self, but it goes a bit it goes longer, that saying ons sal self, maar nie alleen nie. We will do it ourselves, but not alone. We have to work together. We have to not only work with like-minded people and people within your community, also have to build alliances. Geen volk is 'n eiland nie. No folk or people can be an island. You have to build alliances. You have to build relationships with other folk or other peoples that will be able to support you when times get tough. My ancestors understood that, and I hope we can continue that tradition in the present day of creating those types of alliances as well. That's unfortunately a part of our history that's very much either forgotten or just not talked about or taught. Of Afrikaner history is all the great alliances that were forged between Afrikaners and other cultural communities in South Africa in the past. Unfortunately, a lot of it is either lost, people are unaware of it, or for malicious reasons, politicians or the government is keeping it hidden and not telling people about it because that's convenient. But my colleague at AfriForum, Barend Ace, is doing amazing work to bring some of these stories to light. A good example is the Battle of Ghost Mountain, the instance where the Boers fought for the Zulus. If you want to go read about that, just type in Google the Battle of Ghost Mountain, and on Politics Web, there's an English version of Barend Ace's brilliant essay on specific opinion piece specifically on that historical event. It's amazing, amazing stuff. You need to know this type of history. Sideline opinions, very, very correct here. He says intelligence agencies create pro-violence honey traps to expose people inclined to be violent. Yes, and they often egg people on to commit crimes and be violent and extreme so that they can arrest them and then get their quota of showing that we're doing our job, but we're very necessary. Bernard, nice to see you. Says, evening all. You've done very well from when we first met. Keep it up, my friend Bernard. Well, Bernard, I hope things are still great. Your side, I'm unfortunately very far away from where we first met, but hopefully our paths cross again. Debbie says, loving this. It's an additional history lesson and great reminder to stay humble and geared with the right armor. Well, thank you very much. Vultra says honey badgers are fearless. You can go check out some honey badger videos on YouTube to teach you a thing or two about asymmetric self-defense. That's going to have to be our strategy. But also, actually, I want to write an opinion piece on this sometime. Using all these different animals you find on the South African savanna and in the Kalahari Desert as metaphors and lessons that we can learn from them in regards to survival. The two that I've already mentioned are the hedgehog or the porcupine, the eystervark, or the metal pig, if you translate it directly. Or the badger, the ratel, or thirdly, the one I haven't mentioned is the versamelvoëls, the weaver birds. Not weaver birds. I always forget their English name. In Afrikaans, they're versamelvoëls. And then I go look up the English name, and then I forget. They don't have such a great English name. They have a very bland English name that doesn't really describe them very well. There's something like the desert weavers or something like that. But in Afrikaans, they are called versamelvoël, collector birds. And what they do is they build these massive nests on lamp poles and in trees in the Kalahari Desert. The massive nests, and they stick together. One of those birds alone in the desert perishes, but a lot of them together survive and even thrive. Another animal to learn from, as Sideliner Opinions correctly points out, is the leopard of the Cape Mountains. So even today, there are still leopards in the Western Cape Mountains, but they are very scarce and they avoid people. They live there deep in the mountains, but they are still there. And they are, even today, as human development has encroached increasingly on their territory, they're still there. They're still surviving. Same as those caracals in Cape Town. There's still some caracals walking around there on Table Mountain and in Cape Town itself. They've also adapted and been able to survive. So there's another two animals to take inspiration from. All right. So, what I also wanted to talk about, specifically in regards to this topic, is, again, it kind of is already what I mentioned, but I want to go deeper into it. So what is to be done? I mean, action is... Oh, so people are just giving examples of animals that we should be learning from. Of course, yeah, the Cape buffalo as well. What? Wait. Cape buffalo. I'm going to have to go check what that is in Afrikaans. Die Kaapse buffel. I have to go check. I can't remember. So, right. What I also wanted to add is just to elaborate a little bit on action. So yes, of course, real world action is very important. We can't stay online. We can't take up all our time posting online, doing online activism, spreading awareness online. You can't do that. That's not a problem. It doesn't do damage. But you're going to have to do things in the real world. I was actually having a conversation with Arends Roots the other day about this topic, where it's almost as if the same logic as time moving slower in a dream than in the real world almost applies like online and in the real world as well, but in regards to impact. So 100 hours of activism online has the same impact as 1 hour of activism in the real world, or building in the real world. And I think that's something we also need to learn. I see a Slippery Pickle is educating me. He says it's just a buffalo. Yeah, well, all right. So when it comes to action, is that absolutely we have to take action, and it has to be in the real world. You can't just stay philosophizing and debating forever, but also you can't just take action for action's sake. Then you have become an idolater of the act, as I explained earlier. Then your whole philosophy is taking action is the ends almost that you're chasing. It doesn't matter what you achieve through that action. Just taking action is already a good in itself, and that's not true. As I said earlier, the saying goes, it's better to do nothing than to do something stupid. It's even better to do nothing than to do something that's going to get you either arrested or killed. That's the thing that I'm very worried about for some people, and what I'm warning against is you have to be very careful. That there are, and that's the message of my piece as well, that there are people, as MP van Wyk Louw already identified 75 years ago, around about. He already identified that there are people out there that are going to try and instigate you to take illegal or violent action, that it's going to have very serious consequences for those, unfortunately, naive enough or stupid enough or swept up enough to follow the whispers of these idolaters of the act. But those idolaters of the act very often don't face any consequences for the violent action or illegal action that they encourage in others. They often, as I said, when the going gets tough, or when real consequences start being dealt, they slink away into the shadows and are nowhere to be found. years says, absolutely. That's what Arons and I discussed when he was last on my channel. That great discussion. Go check out Yez's channel. You can start with my chat with Yez. It was very, very nice. I really enjoyed it. We have to organize and build our own future, but we can't wait for idolaters of the act to build it for us. Absolutely. We have to be sure of what our plan is, what our vision is. It has to be well thought out, and we build and we take action based on that. We don't just take action for the sake of taking action. So absolutely, I'm glad that you also took that from our chat. Yes, I'm very, very glad that it's stuck. People are keeping keeping up with the little mini meme that has now started in the chat, is to list animals that you can take inspiration from. Sideliner Opinion says the tortoise is probably the least violent animal, which also survives amongst lions because of a great defensive techniques. Absolutely. I'm sure the examples are going to keep going, keep coming in. Arti Pandey says the July riots of 2021 seems to be an example. Yeah, well, depending on what your theory is on where those riots came from, we can only speculate who was behind it, seeing as we still haven't seen the masterminds that the government super double sure are out there. They just can't find them, it seems. Sideliner Opinion says, if MP van Wyk Louw's time, it was the Ossewa Brandwag. Many members were locked up, including John Forster. Quentin Ferreira says the ANC's game plan during the People's War was exactly this: instigate others to violence, provoke a response, and then use media allies to propagandize on their behalf. Excellent book. I think it's a bit out of reach now. Oh, maybe not. 1 second. This is what Quentin is talking about there. Read this book. Anthea Jeffries' The People's War, New Light on the Struggle for South Africa. It's a fascinating read, troubling read, disturbing read, but an absolutely necessary read if you want to understand South African politics, particularly if you live in South Africa and want to make any claims about the 20th century politics in South Africa. Well, I've just been reminded why you should always buy books secondhand and not new. This book was bought, I see here in pencil, this book was sold somewhere for 300 Rand, and then I bought it at a secondhand bookstore for 30 Rand, for 10% of the price. But it's a excellent, excellent book. So once again, there's the title, People's War by Anthea Jeffrey. Fascinating, disturbing piece on our history. All right. Hendo is absolutely correct. He says Urania is an example of action with a positive purpose. Yes, actually today, that reminds me and US Strydom, good friend and also a friend of the show, has been on my show many times, but I've also known him for many years. We had a little interaction on Twitter or X earlier today, specifically on this. And that is the other thing that we need to be wary of, or that we need to stigmatize, is this whole mentality of where you shoot down ideas because they're not big enough, they're not great enough, they're not grand enough. So you think anything smaller is going to fail. So it's the idea of you doing 10 projects and or 10 initiatives, and all 10 are a success, but someone shoots them down because they say, if we have 1,000 successful initiatives, do we stand any chance of survival or success? Therefore, your 10 successes are not worth much, and I'm not going to even try to support them. That's another type of mentality that we have to be very wary of. Hindu I think everyone is aware that I have a Twitter account, but if you are not, Hindu has put it, has been kind enough to put it in the chat there. Hindu, the mod extraordinaire. The day you retire from YouTube modding, Hindu, I don't know who's going to man this chat, because you are a tour de force. Very, very big appreciation for what you do. He also says small things can lead to bigger things. Absolutely. Flip Base, head of chairman of the Solidarity Movement, has a great saying in regards to money, where he says, you make big money with small money. And that's the concept behind solidarity, the solidarity movement and AfriForum as well. A lot of people don't quite grasp how that works, where a lot of people, especially in America and in Europe, but particularly America, have this misconception that the only way you can be successful or have an impact is if you have like billionaires giving you big funding, or like you have a billionaire backer, or this big institutional funding that gives you billions or millions of dollars. It's the only way to have an impact. And that's not true. The solidarity movement and AfriForum, as part of the solidarity movement, proves that there's an alternate model that's a lot more resilient as well, a lot more anti-fragile. And that is what, as Flabé says, taking a lot of small money and turning it into big money. So rather than having a handful of billionaires or one billionaire giving you a lot of funds, or the government giving you a lot of funds to try and achieve something, you have, for example, 300,000, or at this point, 315,000 members like AfriForum has, all giving you a little bit of money. And then you pull that all together, and then you actually have more money than you would have had if some billionaire or some billionaire were to give you money. And also, there's another why that makes you more resilient is the fact that if you have a handful of major funders where the majority of your funding comes from, even worse if you have just one, means that they pull all the strings. They can close the tap anytime they want, and they can pretty much have you in a vice where they say, well, if you don't go this direction, I'm going to cut all funding, and that means all of your funding. Or they can say, if you don't stop this, you're going to lose my funding. And that's a very precarious position to be in. Then you're pretty much just a puppet organization or puppet individual. But when it comes to solidarity, the solidarity movement, which uses the same model as AfriForum, it's hundreds of thousands of members, and they all give a little bit. So it's very unlikely that all of those members are just going to one day quit and say, well, we're not happy with what you're doing, and then your entire organization folds. But if you don't fulfill your mandate, if you're not, as an organization, doing what you set out to do and doing what made those people become members in the first place, they can cancel their memberships. But it's a lot more decentralized. It's not a handful of people, even one person, that controls the money, that controls where the funding comes from, and basically then controls you. It's hundreds of thousands of people. So you've got a lot more solid ground that you're standing on. That's why I can't stop advocating that model to us, particularly our friends in overseas, in America and in Europe, that want to start organizations, that want to start movements, is as far as it's possible, decentralize that funding as much as you can. A lot of small money turning into big money is much better than having just one or two or a handful of big funders that can close the tap at any time. Sideliner Opinion says the AfriForum Neighborhood Watches is another great example of controlled violence focusing on defense of people and their property. Yes, self-defense. Absolutely. This is a difficult question. I'm in America, watching from afar. Who else should I follow, watch to keep up to date on South Africa? Well, let's see. I'm probably going to forget people, and they're going to be angry at me. I'm going to get some DMs like, why didn't you give me a shout out? A good people to follow are firstly, let's start off with my colleagues within the broader solidarity movement, someone like Arends Roots, Flabé, at AfriForum, Kali Kriel, Monique Tate, Louis Boshoff, Charnay Mostert. Jacques Broodryk is a great guy to follow as well, my AfriForum colleague that deals with security and conflict on Twitter. Follow him, Jacques Broodryk. And let's see. All of these people that I'm mentioning, you'll find on my feed if you just go to my Twitter account. So don't worry about how you spell their names. You'll find them there. I retweet them very often and share their stuff. Also, I think a good YouTube channel to watch is a Morning Shot of Roman Kabanak and Byron Shepherd. They cover a lot on South Africa. Big Daddy Liberty is also another great channel to check out on YouTube if you're particularly on YouTube. And then, of course, Colonel Chris Wyatt is also a great channel to watch, particularly for South African content, but also other content outside of that. Yeah, as he has said, Chris Wyatt has great SA coverage. I listened to his podcast for about a year and learned quite a bit from him. Yeah, he's got a great channel. I've been neglecting chat now a little bit. There's a lot now that I have to. I see everyone's punting Chris Wyatt with strong justification. Chris Wyatt on YouTube and Rumble. Also watch John Wells. I don't know who John Wells is, so I can't say if he's good or bad. How do I cancel my subscription to SARS? I feel they aren't delivering on their mandate. Well, you've just been put on a list, Slippery Pickle. I'm sorry. They're going to be knocking on your door. The one thing, the South African government is horrible and totally failing in every single department except tax collection. There they are absolutely ruthlessly effective and efficient. It's the one organ of the state that's still operating with ruthless efficiency is the tax collection service of the South African government. But go figure, that's how it goes. All right. Well, guys, I think that pretty much brings us to the end. I've covered everything that I wanted tonight. Just a reminder, next week, Tuesday, usually the show is every Tuesday, 7 o'clock Central Africa time. But next week, there's not going to be an episode. I'm going to be away with work. So I don't want to spoil yet what I'm going to be doing, but you'll know next week. Just check out I just keep an eye on my social media. Then also, but I think I can give a little bit of a spoiler. I'm going to be doing a presentation before the South African Parliament on against the expropriation bill. So you heard it here first. Yeah, now I think about it, I might as well break the news here. So next week, I'm going to do that presentation opposing the expropriation bill before the South African Parliament. So keep an eye. I will be uploading that clip to my YouTube channel as well. But in 2 weeks, let me just make sure about the date. In 2 weeks, the 3rd of October, a Tuesday, 7 o'clock Central Africa time, I'm going to be talking to Chris Becker about why he's bullish on Southern Africa and how the economic and political order in South Africa is reorganizing. Right. The Afraid to Watch says, thanks for the stream, Aaron. It's always a pleasure to be in the conversation here. Sideline Opinion says, acclaimed journalist on Twitter is great. There's another account you can follow. Hindo says, Colonel Chris Wyatt live streaming soon. Well, when this stream is done, go jump over to Colonel Chris Wyatt. Go check out what he's talking about. Here's the Eunuch says, great, sounds great. Look forward to it. Sideliner Opinion says 9.9 thousand followers. Let's get CC to 10,000. Well, thank you very much, Sideliner Opinions. I'm sure I'll reach 10,000 subscribers, that big milestone before the end of the year. It's going to be a big moment. I'm already feel very humbled by the fact that we've been able to reach this point. But yeah, thank you very much for pointing that out. Yez says, always a good time on your channel, Adams. You're a good man and do good work. God bless. Thank you very much, Yez. I really appreciate it. Quinton says, thanks for the stream, bro. Stay strong, everyone. Cheers, Quinton. Tot ziens. Lekker aand. All right, guys. That brings us to the end. If you like these types of conversations, you can subscribe if you're new here, but also leave a like. It helps out the show. And if you're watching and it's no longer live, you can also leave your comments and thoughts in the comments section. I read all of them and respond to as many as I can. And then also share this the stream with as many people far and wide, social media, outside of social media, friends and family, whoever you think needs to hear these words of warning, but also words of encouragement, words of warning regarding the idolaters of the act that are prowling out there, but then also words of encouragement in regards to wholesome, effective and sustainable and resilient action that can be taken and how to think about that. Wilma sê, dankie Ernst, dankie Wilma dat jy ingeskakel het ook. White student says, thank you, take care CC. All right, cheers guys, have a good one and God bless.